What is going on, YouTube? It is Primitive here, and today I'm going to be bringing you a little bit different of a tier list video. Today we're not going to be going over the current format, talking about what's going to be good or bad in EX3. In fact, we're going to be talking about all of the sets that have come out in Digimon. We're going to be ranking all these sets starting from 1.0, coming all the way up into the newly released EX3, talking about how impactful they were when they came out. That's how the tier list is going to be determined. As you can see here, we have our game warping tier. These are going to be the sets that really set the highest impact in the game and really kind of changed how the game was played. Meta standard, these are sets that came really strong, was able to really just kind of set a lot of meta standards essentially. The some good, some bad, these are just sets where you might have some good individual cards or maybe one or two good archetypes, but maybe not the strongest as the set. And then the little impact is just for sets that came out. They might have had one, two good cards, but really not the most impactful set in the long run of the Digimon TCG. So of course, we're going to start off from the very beginning and talk about set 1.0. 1.0 is our first set, and as such laid down the foundations for how colors would work and how would we start to build in the TCG. 1.0 brought us very strong cards that are still used today, including multiple memory tamers such as TK and Matt, as well as staple cards including War Greymon and Magnangemon. Lilithmon is important to note as well, as this card keeps a single archetype viable at all times just by existing. Other notable cards are strong blue base cards such as Upamon and Gabumon, as well as introducing other strong rookies such as Chumon, a floodgate that is still highly used in today's metagame. So 1.0, a very impactful set, so I am going to put it in game warping. Because it is our first set and it still has many cards that are still used today, it just makes it a very powerful set. The cards get very expensive because it's an older set, but also it's still very strong. And so even though it is one of our older sets and came out as our first set, which sometimes can include some weaker cards, we did get a high batch of very strong cards. So 1.0 definitely just going in the game warping tier. So next up we got 1.5 going alongside 1.0 of course. 1.5, the counterpart to 1.0, came with the rest of the BT1 through 3 cards that we're missing, and those included meta staples such as Davis and Mimi and more floodgates in Terrier and Gazimon to go along with the Chumon we got in 1.0. This set also came out with BT2 Vmon, which has been a staple rookie in Imperial Dramon lists, Demi-Meramon, which is arguably the best purple egg, and a Delicate Plan, the much needed anti-security support. So 1.5 is an interesting one for me because I think that it's not as strong as 1.0 but has some higher Pyre Spike cards because things like Demi-Meramon and Davis are very powerful. I think I want to put it in meta standard. I don't know if it's game warping. I do kind of want to put it there because I do sometimes put 1.0 and 1.5 together, but I am going to separate the two just because 1.0 was the first set and really set the grounds for how the game was going to be played before 1.5 came out shortly after. Next up is BT4, and that is a set that I personally enjoyed a lot when it did come out. That was right about when I first started playing, so there is some nostalgia in that for me. BT4 is a set that felt like at the time it would have many decks that would survive the test of time and come out to future metagames, and although that never happened, it did leave us with the basis for archetypes that would get more support in future sets. BT4 gave us our first hybrids in Lobomon and Agunimon. These weren't the most game-altering cards at the time, but did show great potential and set the first stepping stone for future archetypes. We also got BT4 Commandramon, which gave D-Brigade a powerhouse rookie which it desperately needed, alongside Darkdramon, its new endgame finisher. The Cerberusmon package also came from this set, which helps fuel those purple loop-style decks. We also got great support in Tamers and options, as we got cards like Izzy and Kari, as well as a way to start gaining memory for colors that aren't blue with cards such as Jackraid or Gravity Crush. Now, BT4, this is the set where I started, so it does have some nostalgia for me, but I do think I'm going to have to put it in some good, some bad. We do have some very high power spike cards, some things like hybrids. We got cards like Lucamon in that set, as well as the Cerberusmons, but it's just, there was some good, some bad. I don't really think a lot of this stuff really stuck. It's a lot of cards that kind of need to be in the right metagame to work. Like D-Brigade didn't really work that well till a couple metagames ago and then still really started to pop off. The Cerberusmon package has been in and out, so it is a set that I think goes into some good, some bad. It definitely had impact, so it doesn't go in little impact, but I don't know if it's necessarily in the meta standard since we did get new hybrids in the future that kind of outclassed the Lobo and the Aguni. Alright, time for BT5, baby. BT5 is a very powerful set that holds a lot of cards that still continue to ravage even the most current of metagames. The Agumon and Gabumon line introduced at first were weak and didn't really see any use, but come later sets in BT8 and BT9, these cards would begin to see a huge amount of play and provide decks like Metal Garurumon X Antibody and Black War Greymon with consistent bottom end. And this is the Omnimon set, so if they didn't give us an incredible Omnimon, it would have been a pretty big disappointment, but luckily we did get two Omnimons in the Blitz Omnimon and the Omnimon's Wart Defeat. Both of these Omnimons still top and win events all this time later and can still hold a higher value than they did back in BT5. This set also gives us a good amount of staple Digitama and a new set of Floodgates in Siakomon and Cutemon. Dual Tamers were also introduced in this set, which is important because this is a trend we will see in future sets. So BT5, I think I would automatically put it in meta standard, probably above 1.5. I think we got a lot of cards that were pretty staple. The Omnimons were really big. We did get more Omnimon support as these sets went on, so having good Omnimons was very nice. So to get those has been very big, and it's also supplied good top end for multiple decks as the meta's gone on. Currently decks like Metal Garurumon X Antibody, so that is very nice, and also just came out with a lot of really good consistency cards, whether that be the Floodgates or just the Agumon and the Gabumon lines, but regardless, I really like BT5. BT6, can't wait to talk about this one. Oh yeah, BT6, my favorite set. Why is this my favorite set, you may ask? Well, this set released what is my favorite archetypes of cards in the Bond of Friendship and Bond of Bravery. These decks were so much more powerful than most of the previous decks and really showed the power that we were headed for in the Digimon TCG. But they were rivaled in strength by the other new archetype, Jesmon. This deck, although highly inconsistent, had a line of play so powerful it felt impossible to beat when it got its stack fast enough. This Jesmon support would also come alive again with the new Jesmon starter decks, making these older Jesmon cards get their second chance at meta domination. BT7 also graced us with the Three Musketeers archetype, which as more 7-cost options get released, it continues to become more flexible and is always waiting for the right meta to strike. This set also gave us some pretty good staples on the lower end, such as Chikurimon, a rookie used by most black decks in its current meta for its insanely powerful security effect, and more dual tamers such as TK Kari or Izzy and Joe. Alright, BT6, I want to put it higher for favoritism, but honestly, it's probably meta standard. It did come out with enough good cards to where I do think that it really kind of set a lot of cards. Like, the Jesmon stuff is very nice, Bond of Friendship is still semi-viable, but Beelstarmon is very strong, and also cards like Chikurimon and TK Kari are consistently used, so I think it's very strong. This one, I don't actually know what order to put it in. I kind of want to put it here, and I also want to put it here. So I'm just going to put it here for now. I might change this, but it's somewhere around here. These are all very close. Alright, our first side set, EX1. EX1 was our first side set, and one that I had high hopes for with all the amazing retro art attached to each card. But now looking back, we can see that EX1 was not the most amazing of sets, although it did leave us with arguably the strongest card in the game, Icewall. Shout out Team Icewall, by the way. The other notable cards are those of EX1 Vmon and Analog Youth, which aren't the worst cards, but they aren't so powerful that they should be the key highlights of a set. X-Vmon and Hagurumon were great support cards to the Imperial Dramon and D-Brigade archetypes that have seen a lot of play, but this set's secret rare, Machine Dramon, unfortunately still waits to see its time in the limelight. Alright, EX1, I kind of want to put it in some good, some bad, but I don't think it had enough cards to be there. I think it just has little impact. I think we got some really nice things here, like Ice Wall, Analog, win rate 60%. We had some key rookies and champions in there as well, but not really any archetype forming cards or anything like that. Just some nice key pieces, XVmon, Haguru, whatever. But I think EX1, just as the first side set, I think it did go a little light, but it was a little bit disappointing in the current metagame. Oh ho ho, BT7. This one's spicy. BT7 completely changed the game upon release, as it gave us not only a slew of new level 4 hybrids, but the new powerful level 5 hybrids and tamers with inheritables to join them. Hybrids have completely taken over how decks are built and played against, as well as spawning an entire archetype just based around the color's respective hybrid. BT7 was also a big fan of purple, giving us the powerhouse cards like Eismon and Eismon Scatter Mode, as well as the newly restricted Calling of Darkness. This set also gave us our first look at the Dark Nightmon archetype, a relatively weak deck at the time, but one that will one day have its time to shine. The secret rares of this set, Susanomon and Lusamon, have both been in and out of the limelight and will most likely continue to do so because of their high archetype dependencies, but they are still very strong cards. Alright, BT7, I'm going to put in Game Warping under 1.0 just because of all the hybrids. The other cards are nice too, Aizmon, all the purple cards, Susano, those cards are great, but I really just think the influx of hybrids really put this there. Yellow hybrid was insane, green hybrid was insane, red hybrid was insane, blue hybrid was tier 0, so hybrids, it just has to be Game Warping. I don't know if maybe I put it above 1.0 here. 1.0, maybe I shouldn't put as much dependency as on the fact that it's our first set being the Game Warping. I think just the amount of hybrids that came out of this really kind of set the entire metagame. Blue hybrid continued to go forward, and hybrids are still in most decks right now. Maybe not every deck, but going forward for the rest of the game, hybrids will always be viable, and it really started off with this, and these hybrids are strong enough to where they will probably be supported for the rest of the game. Dual colors, DNA Digivolve, BT8 baby. This set is crazy. From the new dual color cards, DNA Digivolution, to the new Armor Purge mechanic, and all the new decks built in between, BT8 is not a set you should be missing out on if you're looking to build all the new current meta decks. BT8, as mentioned, gave us new Armor Digivolution cards and the new Armor Purge mechanic. A lot of time, these armor cards were mostly for decks like Armor Rush or Imperial Digimon, but their versatility makes them contenders for any deck's champion slot. And speaking of Imperial Digimon, although mostly coming from the Imperial Digimon starter deck, there were still a lot of supporting cards in the set, making it fully viable, like the new DNA Digivolution card Chimeramon. This also gave us the new Black War Greymon and its supporting cast, which has made huge waves in the competitive scene, and with new support on the horizon, it is not a deck going away anytime soon. And let's all give a big thank you to BT8 for the staples it gave to us. Cards like Psychmon, Davis Ken, or Flame Hellscythe are all just huge power spike cards. And let's not forget Creepymon. Although he may be one of the weaker secret rares, its ability to trash from the opponent's deck is just one wave of support away from potentially being broken. BT8, I feel like has to go in Game Warping because of all of the mechanics that were given. We had dual colors, we had DNA, we had Armor Purge, we had many things going on, so BT8 has to be Game Warping with just how much went on. I also think just a lot of the cards are incredibly powerful. If you look on TCG Player and look at the rares from this set and the price of them compared to a lot of the rares from other sets like BT7, BT9, the rares of this set are very high because of the power level of them, and so it's very Game Warping. EX2, Return of the Side Sets. Our second side set was one a lot of people were anticipating and even worried over just because of its main archetype, Mother D Reaper. Although the deck now is completely solved and easily played around, at the time of release it was a huge meta threat that put decks on a clock and looked to be a meta staple for future metas to come, and since the JP meta went so hard into this deck, it looked like it would be taking over the North America metagame as well. Even though Mother D Reaper is the main attraction of EX2, I still think cards such as Blocker Leomon or Gallantmon Crimson Mode are much more powerful, more reliable cards that take the spotlight for me. We also got some support cards like Iron Mako to go along with the new Beelsmon and the new plug-in cards which were meant to support the new Sakuyamon archetype, but I think they're much stronger on their own. EX2, Return of the Side Set, Return of the Little Impact. Actually, I think I might even put it below EX1 because EX1 gave us things like Ice Wall. I think EX2 gives us cards that are very archetypal specific and are very powerful in that archetype, but the archetypes also aren't that great. Beelsmon is still not the greatest archetype. We will see how it is when we get that new starter deck. And Gallantmon, a deck that I think has been teetering around tier 2 and recently getting a pretty decent spot in the Ultimate Cup, is on the rise. I don't think Gallantmon is totally terrible, and having the Crimson Mode is nice, even though it's not an auto-include in the Gallantmon deck, funnily enough. So I just think EX2 is definitely, now that I'm talking about it, definitely less impactful than EX1. So we're just going to put the EX sets down here. Sorry, friends. I hope as you're watching this that you're feeling fine, because up next is BT9. BT9, the metagame we are still playing today in EX3. BT9 was a very powerful set that really set the standard for future decks. BT9 introduced us to many X-Antibody decks fueled by the new Tamer Coolboy and option card X-Antibodies such as War Greymon X and Magnamon X, but the one to stand above them all is Metal Garurumon X-Antibody. Metal Garurumon X has topped pretty much every event since it was released and has won even more events than I can keep track of, even in the current EX3 format. But Metal Garurumon isn't the only thing coming from BT9 to win events. Grandis Kuwagamon is a card that gave the final piece to an archetype left behind in BT4 and made it stronger than ever before. With high OTK potential and a wide variety of consistency and aggression tools, this is much like Jessamon and BT6, where if you can get that perfect stack, the deck feels almost impossible to beat. And let's not forget to mention everybody's favorite card, Death Xmon, a card that seems to fit in every deck no matter what and has somehow still dodged the ban list. BT9 also laid the foundation for BT10 decks and the Tai Kari Tamer and Sunrise Buster options, setting up for a potential cross-heart invasion. BT9, although I am joking around when I say that we're still playing BT9 metagame, which, I mean, we still kind of are, I don't want to put it in game warping because I don't think fundamentally it was game warping as much as it just should go at the top of meta standard. It gave us a lot of decks that really set the standard for the metagame. Metal Garurumon, Grandis, Kuwagamon, things like that really are kind of the bar for what can win events and what you have to beat, and so I really think BT9 is a very strong set. I think it'll just go straight up in meta standard. Only 2 sets left, so let's go ahead and go in with our last BT set, BT10. BT10 is a set that has a lot of potential power, but also feels like a set that is just half made. We got the introduction of 2 highly anticipated archetypes in Blue Flare and Crossheart, but Blue Flare was a shell of a deck needing EX3 and BT11 to fully operate, and Crossheart was a deck that wasn't at the power level it seemed it was in Japan, and was quickly restricted here in North America, making it much harder to gauge how Crossheart would have affected future metas. BT10 also gave us Bloom Lordmon, which has spawned its own archetype that is starting to spread with the Hydramon support in EX3. This set also introduced us to Skill Drain, or I mean Venusmon, a very powerful control top end that hasn't seen full power yet, but is one that will more than likely always be viable for its power of shutting off opponents' effects and mitigating aggression. Although Venusmon stole the show for the Yellow Mega, we still have Sakuyamon Maid Mode, which is now much weaker with the Sunrise Buster hit, but can still emerge as a top threat in future metas as long as the right card to pair with Maid Mode is released. And for all you Dark Knightmon fans, I'm sure you are very happy to see the new wave of support to finally start taking steps to making Dark Knightmon a meta staple. Alright, BT10, I'm honestly going to put it in some good, some bad. I kind of want to put it in meta standard, but I really think I need to see how it would fit in BT11, a lot of the archetypes. I think this would go up here if I played more BT11 and felt how some of the new Blue Flare and Crosshouse support feels. It's going to be harder to tell because of the restricted list changing things up. So I think this either goes here or here. I think it's one of those two, but I'm going to put it here for now because that was my first instinct. I still think it's a good set, but some is good, some is not as great. Alright, EX3 is going to be our last set. Let's finish this off strong. EX3, our third side set and our most recent release in the English metagame. I'm not sure if it was just my area or if everyone felt this way, but there seemed to be an extra layer of hype and anticipation for EX3 as it provides us with multiple new archetypes and the limited slots that these sets have. I have to start off with the new Imperial Dramon. Although it's not the greatest deck and has some glaring speed and consistency issues, it's still my baby Imperial, and I believe that deck will rise with some more support in the future. Examon is probably the deck you think of when you think of EX3. With its insane power swings, powerful evade and blocker inheritables, and burst potential, it really has a target on its back as the new top dog on the streets. I'm personally the most excited for the new D-Brigade support. With D-Brigade topping multiple events in the past few metagames, this deck getting a new wave of powerful support can only mean good for these little dinosaurs crew's future. Dragon Links and Trial of the Great Dragons are decks that seem really cool, and I'm glad that we got full archetype over filler cards, but these decks really don't hit that competitive bar like the previously mentioned decks could. So EX3, I think it's, I think I'm going to put it somewhere up here. This one is going to be the hardest one to manage because we haven't had enough time for me to really digest this metagame and how impactful it is as release as a lot of these other decks. I think that this could maybe go down. I think it has a lot of potential. Actually, yeah. I think because it's a side set, I think it does go down. I think I might put it right about here. It is a very strong set. Examon, Imperial, D-Brigade, these could be very strong decks that continue to go on for the next few meta-games. So I think no matter what, this set is going to be a meta standard. But I don't really think that it's game warping, and I don't think that there's enough bad to put it in some good, some bad. I think the fact that we still at least got some full archetypes and things like Dragon Links, even though I don't think it's the most competitive crazy deck, I still think that it could get support in the future. It could be a good deck, and at least we got something to build off of instead of just random rookies, champions, and ultimates that kind of might get used, but not as much like we saw in these other EX sets. But that is going to be this tier list. Again, like I said, this is a little bit different than the other tier lists we've done. So let me know if this type of video is something that you enjoyed. I did throw in the little bit of editing talking about the sets. So if you like that as well, please let me know. I just like to know what you think about it. But with that being said, let me know what you think of the list, what you think of each set, maybe what you would change. But I'll catch you all next time. I hope you have a fantastic day. Peace out.